This is the Marketing Minute with Eric Rhoads, author of the #1 Amazon bestseller, Make More Money Selling Your Art, Proven Techniques to Turn Your Passion into Profit.
So you guys can send your questions to me, eric@artmarketing.com, or you can come live on the podcast if you want to do that, and we can prearrange that. Just let us know. So I have never seen these questions. I'm doing this stuff off the top of my head. The first question is from Trish Dorton in Columbus, Georgia. Question is about passive income. For example, giclee prints of works. Does that impact your brand and marketability as a fine artist? And can it be done in a way to accentuate your career? Well, I think that there's really two questions in this, maybe more questions in it. The first question is about passive income. Let's talk about that before we talk about prints. I think that every artist needs to look for an opportunity to find passive income. Passive income are things that you can do without, it's essentially leveraging yourself, right? So think about this. If you're a doctor, you only have so much time and you can only see so many patients. But if you're a doctor who has some other special skill, maybe it's something you can train people in, then you have the opportunity to create passive income. So passive income as an artist isn't necessarily teaching, right? So teaching in person is taking up your time, right? So if you're teaching online or you're teaching a in-person workshop or you have a class on a Thursday night or something like that, that's really not passive income. That's income. It's important income, but if it takes your time, then it's not passive. It's active, right? So passive income would be like if you came to Streamline PaintTube, for instance, and you created an art instruction video with us. That's passive income. You invest a few days of your time, a little bit of planning time, and then we sell it, and it continues to sell over years and years and years and years, and you get a check in the mail every month, hopefully for 20 or 30 years, right? So that's passive income. The same thing would be true for a print market or something else. But of course, what you have to figure out is, how do I make it passive? So if you decide you want to go into the print market, which a lot of artists do, then how do you leverage it? Well, in one way, a print is a leverage of an original, right? So I had dinner one time with Thomas Kincaid, and he said to me, my biggest regret in life is that I sold a lot of my original paintings. And he said, I didn't make prints of all of them because I didn't know how to do it. I don't even have photographs of all of them. But he said, in a world where I can make prints, he said, I keep my originals. I don't sell my originals. They become more valuable, and then I make prints off of them. And so I can potentially make prints off of one painting for decades. And I'm sure, even though he's passed, I'm sure somebody is still doing that. And so, there was, when I first got into this, there was a lot of people who were dissing the idea of doing prints, and because it cheapens the artist. But I know a lot of artists who were very successful doing that, and in a couple of ways. John Stobart, was a dear friend of mine. John was a multimillionaire, and he became a multimillionaire by selling prints. John had full page ads, if you can imagine, running in the New York Times selling prints. Well, he didn't sell a few. He sold tens of thousands of prints. Now, John was leveraging himself because he was on PBS at the time, so some people knew him. He was at the peak of his career. He was very popular and well known. And even if he wasn't, he advertised a beautiful print, and people would buy them. That was what I call direct marketing, right? He ran an ad. It had a place that you could, in that particular case, you could fill out the form on the ad, cut it out, put it in an envelope, and send a check to him, and he would send you the painting in return. Nowadays, of course, you can do that all online. Nobody has to send checks. Everybody can just do it online, and it's easier. Um, there are lots of artists. I've got a friend in Texas who does, he has a huge print business. He does his own printing, he does his own framing, he makes his own frames, and it's a huge income for him. Now, the way he sells them though is that he does these art shows. It's taking his time, so it's active, not passive. But he has art shows where he's selling originals, but you see an original and it's a two or three or four or five or $20,000 original. You go, well, maybe that's not for me, but I love it. And so somebody goes, well, here's a print for $50. And and he knows that his cost to create that print is $16 or whatever. And so he's making good money on it. And if he sells 100 of them at an art show, hey, that's better than not having them. And because sometimes you don't sell an original. So I think it's perfectly fine. I think that you need to talk to the people who support you, meaning if you're in an art gallery, how do they feel about it? Some art galleries don't feel good about prints and some do. But I would encourage everybody to say, okay, in what ways can I create passive income? What can I do one time and repeat it multiple times where it doesn't require me to be there physically? That's leveraging yourself. That gives you passive income, and I think it can be very valuable. So, what the question then is that Trish said is can it be done in a way that accentuates your career? Well, I don't know what that means. Is it going to build your brand? Um, Probably not. I mean, likely somebody buys a print and they don't even know who did it, and it gets framed and hung on a wall, and they might see your signature. They might know who you are. They might not. Same thing, by the way, is true even with an original. It's sometimes that just happens, and I even have paintings on my walls that I've forgotten who did them, and I shouldn't, but it's just kind of the reality. So I don't know if it accentuates your career. It accentuates your income, and if you have income, then that buys you freedom, right? Freedom buys you a lot of things. So income, I look at income not as do I need that income to be able to pay my bills and to be able to go on trips and travel the world and all that stuff. Yeah, I need that. But I also take a percentage of my income and I use it in other ways, right? So like I might want a percentage of my income going to, in my case, tithing to help other people. Or I might want to say, look, I'm going to take 20% of my income and I'm going to devote that to advertising my giclee prints and setting up a direct marketing thing so that people can click on these ads and see them and buy them. Or I'm going to use a percentage of that income towards advertising to build my brand and to get more collectors familiar with me so that they know who it is they're hanging on the wall. So I hope that helps, Trish. The next question is from a user whose name is PaintPot 7623. I have difficulty following through with any marketing. Welcome to the club. I'm older. I've struggled for over 30 years to chase up money for sales. Should I keep trying? Should I hire myself to hire somebody to market for me or just concentrate on the art itself? Well, you've touched on a big nerve. So I was watching something on X last night on Twitter, and it was a speech from a woman in Silicon Valley who was talking about growing a business. And one of the things that she said really struck me, and that is that you can't grow without help. You can only get so far on your own because you are limited in what you know, you're limited in your abilities, and you're limited in your time. So I have a staff of 55 people, and I used to have no staff, right? And as soon as I could afford one person, I hired one person and I said, okay, this is what you're going to do for me. And then that person got to the point where they were maxed out. And if I wanted to grow and I wanted to do more things, I had to figure out how to afford a second person. And a lot of that, of course, is sales. If you have somebody to help you with sales, then that funds everything else, right? You don't want a bunch of employees that are not generating income. You want people who are helping you generate income. So, should I hire someone to market for me? Well, you have, I think, a couple of options. There are a lot of artists out there who are doing um, marketing with marketing professionals. Sometimes it's an ad agency, sometimes it's an agent, sometimes it's a husband or a wife or a friend. If you can find somebody that you know and trust to do your marketing, then you got to figure out, okay, how do I pay them? Now, you might pay them as a percentage of sales. That's one opportunity. You might just say, I'm going to pay you a flat amount of money. Here's what I need you to do for me. And by the way, if you don't understand marketing, you might not even know what you need them to do for you. So I'm a big fan of other people helping you. First off, it's going to leverage you because the one thing that painters forget, you know, I get so frustrated because I see painters who are pretty good who could be getting to the next level if they were putting 8 or 10 hours a day into it, but instead they're getting distracted by income distraction, right? So an income distraction is I got to figure out how to do my own shipping. I got to figure out how to package these paintings. I got to figure out how to frame them. I got to figure out how to sell more. I got to figure out how to deal with gallery relationships or get a gallery or I've got to figure out how to sell more stuff online. I got to do more social media so I sell more stuff online. All of these things are shiny objects and they're distractions. I'm not saying you shouldn't do them, but if you had somebody doing your social media for you, if you had somebody helping you with your marketing, if you had galleries representing your work, you're leveraging yourself. There's that word again, leveraging, right? Because you can only do so much. But you picture a fulcrum, right? There's a rock, there's a rod, and you don't have to push very hard on that fulcrum to lift something heavy. Well, that's what other people do for you. So if you can, do it. If you cannot afford it, then find a way to get somebody to help you do it temporarily and or for a piece of the income. Now you want to be careful with that because if you're giving up pieces of income, next thing you know, you don't have any. Everybody thinks that that's an easy route. My dad told me something when I was very young. He said, "Don't ever have partners." And I immediately went out and got a partnership. And so immediately me and another guy were splitting things 50-50. And but I was doing a lot of work. I was doing all the sales, he was doing all the product, and it seemed like a really good relationship. And it was until it failed. And then all of a sudden we went from 100 miles an hour to zero because he decided he didn't want to do it anymore. Or I've had other situations where I've seen people who say, "Well, I have this guy is going to help me. I'm going to give up 10% of my company for him, and then there's another helper I'm going to give 10% for them, and then another helper I'm going to give 10% for them." And if it's actual stock in your company, then one day, if things don't work out, which sometimes they don't, next thing your company's more valuable. You got to buy them out. And so that's why I'm a little bit reluctant about that. Be really careful about just giving away the farm. It's much better if you can hire somebody and pay them a fair fee or wage for the product that they're producing for you rather than giving up equity because someday you'll regret it. It doesn't seem like much now. You might say, well, I don't mind giving up 10% to somebody now because I'm only making, I don't know, $1,000. But what if you were making $100,000 and you realize you gave them $10,000? Or what if you were making $1 million and you were giving them $100,000 and they're not working that hard anymore? So those are the things you have to keep in mind. Yes, leverage yourself if possible. Find a way to get somebody to help you with marketing. A lot of artists, my big frustration, I teach marketing a lot. I've got a website devoted to it, artmarketing.com. I've got a book. I'm going to be teaching at the plein air convention. I'm going to be teaching lunch and learn art marketing sessions. And my big frustration is that artists want to be artists and they don't really want to learn marketing. They know they need to learn marketing. you need to understand it and learn it, even if you have somebody else doing it for you, because you need to control your messaging and make sure you're not getting perceived as sleazy or otherwise. But I think that just keep that in mind as you're progressing. Anyway, that's been the Art Marketing Minute. I hope it helps.
This has been the Marketing Minute with Eric Rhoads. You can learn more at artmarketing.com.